All right, welcome back. So, if you watched the video on our guessing game, here's our guessing game all laid out. And the guessing game was interesting, but we had to inspect the console to kind of play our game and to get the feedback from our game, which my guess is you've never done before on any real page before, right? So that's not ideal, right? So 1, here it is again, 2, 3, and I lose. Okay, and the answer is 4. Not great, right? So what we'd really like to have happen is we'd like to have our input affect the actual page. So that's kind of what we're going to look at today. So here's what I'm going to do. I don't want to lose my guessing game. So I'm going to rename this file. And I'm going to make a new script.js. And that way we have guessing game still, but our HTML still references our script.js. Let me close our file manager for a second. And I just want to, I'm going to close this tab up here too. So I only have the tabs I'm looking at up here. And I want to talk about our HTML for a second. Notice on all of our HTMLs, we have these things called tags. And every tag sort of indicates another element that's on our page. There are basically two areas of a tag. One area is the content of the tag, the stuff in between the opening and closing tags, in this case, Hello World in the title or the H1 of Hello World. There's also something called attributes. With our script, it's the source tag here. With our link, it's the reference and the link to the file here. Okay, those are the attributes to those tags. There's lots of different attributes we can add to a tag. A common one is giving a tag a particular ID. For example, we could call this first header. Okay. That would be an ID for this H1. That would allow us to do another H1 if we wanted to, and give it a separate ID. And put something else in there. Now, having done this, we can come over here, we can refresh, and we can notice nothing's really different between H1 and H2. But they have these different IDs, and those IDs are things we can use to reference in JavaScript to start making changes to our actual web page. Let's jump over to the JavaScript for a second, and let's go ahead and get some information from the user. We do this by doing, well, see if you can remember how we do this. I'll give you a second. You can pause the video if you want to try it on your own. Okay. Let's go ahead and get the name of the user from the user. Now, if we want to make changes to the HTML, we need to reference the HTML. We need to have some way of saying, hey, I want access to what you have over there. And we do that by manipulating something called the DOM. I'm going to come over here to our web page, MDN DOM. So the DOM, or the Document Object Model, connects web pages to scripts. It's basically a way of looking at our web page as a group of separate objects. And in our web page, each object is kind of defined by one of these tags and their ID, right? So this H1 is an object, this H1 is an object, this title is an object. These are all objects we can reference. So this page, consider this whole page the DOM, and we have a reference to the DOM that we call the document. And the document is the interface that represents any web page loaded in the browser, and it's a way of us sort of editing the content of our web page. And lucky for us, JavaScript kind of has a built-in way of referencing this. We can use the lowercase word document, which is a preset variable that automatically refers to this index HTML that the script is linked to. So let me see. Let's go ahead and get the reference to this. Right. Window.document, in this case, we can just write document, returns a reference to the document contained in the window. The window in this case being this window. And you can see this is how you reference it. Now, we don't need to do window.document. We can just do document, and that'll be sufficient. It'll automatically assume the window. The next thing we want to do on document is we want to get access to an element by its ID. Now, look, there's lots of things you can do on an element, right? Look at all this stuff. You can create elements. You can get information, elements from a point. Children is going to refer to all the elements, sub-elements, all the document elements. But here we are, and we want to get an element. So we're going to use one of these. And so far, we've identified our elements by ID. So we're going to say get element by ID. We're going to open up the parentheses. We're going to open up the quotes. And first header was one of my elements, right? And we go back to the HTML, we can see I called it first header. There it is. Okay. So we go into our script, we reference first header, and now we have the opportunity to do this. Now is a reference to that first header. We could, in fact, even store this as a variable if we wanted to, and then we could do things to it. We could pass it around. Let's go ahead and say first header. We'll keep this reference to it. And now, real quickly, let's just console.log first header dot, and let's grab an element from our first header. Let's see what its inner text looks like. And let's just go ahead and see what this produces. Command S to save. I'm going to close these two references to MDN. We're going to rerun this. What's your name? Mr. Huber. We don't actually do anything with that variable right now, but you'll notice what we get out in our console is what is inside first header. And if we go back here and see, first header does say hello world, right? That is what is inside that. If we were to change this to reference second header instead, and let's see what it says is inside of second header. We'll go ahead and save, refresh the page, and we have goodbye. And you'll see we're referencing what's inside the second header element. So this document.getElementById allows us to reference whatever we write here. And I could call this whatever. First header, second header, fine. I could call this hello world. I could call this goodbye. I could give them whatever ID I want, as long as in here, I then say, hey, by the way, I want to reference this. Let me drag this a little bit bigger. I want to reference this by ID, and here's the ID I want to use. Okay, so we know we can get information out of it, but that's not what we're interested in today. We're interested in putting information into it. So what if we did second header dot inner text, and we actually made a change to the inner text? Let's see what happens here. Let's change this to say, let's just put the user name there. So we're just going to reference the name. Command S. This should reference the name we type in, right? And you'll notice we now have an interaction between what the prompt asks for and what is happening on the web page. We can now change that, right? This used to say goodbye, but when I type in my name and I hit enter, and the code continues to run, it takes what's inside of here and replaces it with username. And we can actually go and look at the elements of the page, and you'll notice second header, the HTML is actually changed here, right? Here it says goodbye. Here it says Mr. Huber because of what our JavaScript is doing. So our JavaScript is taking a name, getting a reference to this document, specifically this element of our document, second header element, and then making some changes to that second header. And that's not all you can change. You can change other things. If you look through all of this, I mean, there's opportunities to animate. There's opportunities to append things, right? There's all sorts of ways we can change our object there. We could also get other aspects of that object, right? You can see here we could define some interaction with it if we wanted to. Some of this is not going to work for every type of element either. Some of this is going to be reserved for the types of elements that have these kind of interactions. We could also see what kind of parent element it's related to, right? What is it the child of? Second header in this case is the child of our body element, so we could do that. We can also change its attributes if we wanted to. We could change its ID. We could set a different attribute for it. One common thing here is to kind of change the style, right? And what style do we want to change? Well, maybe we want to change the color. And what do we want to set the color to? Well, maybe we want to set the color to... not sure this will work. We probably have to set the property. We probably have to give the property name as a string, in this case, color. And then I think we'd have to give the value as a string too. Let's make it red. And I'm experimenting here. I haven't actually tested this beforehand, right? And I probably should have, but let's give it a shot. So it's blue right now. We type in Mr. Huber and it's red. It doesn't change the text anymore, right? It just says, just changes the color to red from where it would have been at the beginning, which is blue. So you see it's blue. We type in our name, we hit OK, and now it's red, right? So you can do all sorts of things now. This becomes pretty powerful, right? When you start thinking about all the little things you can change about the elements on the web page. And our pages start to become this kind of discussion between what elements we want to build and how they look, and then what changes we want to make to those elements based on interactions our user has. And this is really how the modern web page gets built. Now, let's try our skill check for today. We've all worked on those tip calculators, right? So here's what I'd like you to do. Use the work that we've done so far on our tip calculator, but this time, instead of printing to the console, go ahead and make your website report back the information that your user entered about the tip and about what calculation they want to do. So let's actually, instead of printing to the console now, let's actually print that information out to our web page here about, so have them prompt twice, figuring out the bill amount, the tip percentage, and then go ahead and report that out to the website instead of the console, and use some string interpolation or concatenation and actually say some sentences, right? Your total bill amount was, your requested tip percentage was, based on what you entered, you would owe a total of blank, whatever that is, okay? All right, good luck.